Today you're gonna help me build a gaming PC, but not just any gaming PC. This one is special because it's gonna be my personal PC, the one I'm gonna be using in my studio. And I don't wanna spoil too much, but I will tell you that if the rule more RGB equals more FPS is true, this PC is going to have millions of FPS. And you might be wondering why I need a gaming PC in my studio if I'm supposed to come here to work. And you're partly right, this is my workplace. But in the end, the reality is that I end up spending more hours here than in my own home. I work almost all day from here, whether it's recording, writing scripts, testing products, filming B-roll, even having meetings. And when I get home, many times I don't even have the energy to play a few rounds of Helldivers 2, which is the latest game I got hooked on. Now, I have noticed that many times when I'm here in the studio, I have free times in between tasks. Sometimes I'm waiting for a package to arrive, or I finish my lunch and want to rest a bit before getting back to work. And what I end up doing is watching some old series on Netflix to pass the time. Time that, obviously, could be better spent gaming. Now, you're probably also wondering why I don't currently have a PC set up in my studio. And the truth is that I do have one, but it's nothing special. I don't even have a graphics card in it because I never felt it was necessary. It even seemed like a bit of a waste of hardware to me because the reality is that today I don't edit my videos since I have my editor that's right here, and he does have a mega PC built for editing and rendering. And what I usually do on the computer here is write documents, send emails, browse the internet, and do tasks without much complexity. And for that, to be honest, a Ryzen 3 from a couple of generations ago is more than enough for me. But well, everything has its time and things happen for a reason, because I've been toying with this idea of building a setup here in the office for a couple of months now, and I've been overthinking it in my head to see what I could do. And coincidentally, a couple of months ago, the people from Corsair wrote to me to see if I wanted to test all their new stuff they released. And when I say all their new stuff, I mean everything, from peripherals to fans to liquid cooling, memory, cases, and more. So when they approached me, I thought it was the perfect opportunity to build myself a mega gaming setup here in the office, with which I can not only send emails without a problem, but also play a few rounds of Helldivers 2 or any other game that I feel like without much trouble. And this time I'm going to do things differently. Instead of starting by mounting all the components to the motherboard, I wanted to start with the case. Why? Well, if I'm being 100% honest, because I was too curious about this Corsair 5000T, which is possibly the most expensive case I've ever mounted a PC in. If you were looking for a small case, this one clearly isn't it. In fact, it's quite large and heavy. To begin with, what I did was disassemble everything that could be disassembled with the idea of being able to work as comfortably as possible later on. We removed the side panels, top cover, hard drive base that I'm not going to use, this little piece that goes in front of the PSU cover. Basically, we left the case to the bone, as simple as possible. By doing this, we discovered that the 5000T comes not only with 3 fully RGB fans, but also with a bunch of LED strips that surrounds the entire structure. And the best part? All the cables come already pre-routed and pre-installed in the controllers you see on the screen right now, which are capable of connecting a ton of devices at the same time. However, we're not gonna connect anything additional to this since we have the brand's newest accessories, which have Corsair's new system called IQ Link, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Before that, I want to place the power supply, which in this case is the new RM1200X Shift. I must say that for a high-end power supply, I was a little disappointed that it didn't come with a little pouch for the cables, but this is a minor detail. What's not a minor detail is that this is one of Corsair's new power supplies, which has the connectors on the side of it. This gives us a lot of ease not only when assembling the PC, but also in the future when we want to remove or add something new to the build, we can do it much more comfortably without the need to remove the power supply completely. I, in fact, decided to plug the PSU cables at the end of this assembly, which is something I've never done before. Apart from that detail, the power supply, it's a normal 1200 watt PSU with all the protections and certifications that a power supply must have to be used in a high-end PC like this one. But well, let's move on to the next thing I installed in the case, which is the water cooling. In this case, we used the IQ Link H150i LCD 360mm, which of course comes with an LED screen. And if you look closely, you'll notice not only that the fans come pre-installed on the radiator, but also that there's not a single cable coming out of either the fans, the radiator, or the pump. This is thanks to the fact that this water cooler and these fans come with the IQ Link system I mentioned earlier, and they have internal connections between them which allow them to make the whole connection with a single cable, which will go to this small hub that the radiator has over here. And please don't worry, I will show you how the fans work when I add the next ones. Okay, after much thought, I decided to put the water cooling in this position with the fans pushing air out of the case. This way, I make sure I always have fresh air coming in from the front of the case to my CPU, and I also guarantee that the hot air will come out of the back of the case without affecting the rest of my assembly. As I had already anticipated, at the top of the case I put these other kit fans, and as you can see, this also comes pre-assembled, but the reality is that they can be simply separated, since they have two connectors between each one. One connector is the one that transmits all the data and power, and the other is simply a little rubber cap that is placed here to give it more robustness. I installed these three fans pulling fresh air towards the VRM and towards the GPU, which I know actually goes a little bit against the natural flow of air where usually hot air rises. But since we're also installing an extra fan at the back, alone and pulling air out, this one should be able to get rid of the hot air generated by the graphics card. Okay, and as I promised you, all these fans can be interconnected with each other up to 7 at a time, and they go to this device, which is precisely the IQ Link. This has two connectors and can handle up to 14 Corsair RGB devices, 7 on each side. This is all powered by a 6-pin PCIe Express connector that goes to the power supply, and it also connects to the motherboard via a USB 2.0 cable to provide information to the IQ software about all the devices, temperatures, and more. The truth is that the system is wonderful, super simple, and while I don't love that the cables are proprietary, they are super convenient, they can be rotated, and the connection is super robust, so I give Corsair a 10 out of 10 on this system. Okay, now the time has finally come to assemble the rest of the components, and we're going to build the PC with an MSI Z790 Carbon Wi-Fi motherboard. This high-end motherboard has basically everything that I need for my build, and even quite a bit more. The CPU we'll be using is none other than the 13900K, which honestly is a bit overkill for this, but hey, if I have it in hand, why not use it, right? As for the RAM, obviously we used 32 gigs of Corsair, specifically the Vengeance RGB DDR5 6200 mega transfer per second. Why 32 and not, let's say, 64 gigs? Well, the rational answer is that I genuinely don't need more than 32 gigs to play games and send emails. But the real one is that I simply didn't have another kit on hand. Otherwise, I would have put it in just to annoy people and read your criticism in the comments. It's always funny. Finally, before going back to the case, we installed this 2TB Gen 4 MP600 Elite SSD. And here I had a slight inconvenience, since I wanted to install it with the factory heatsink because it looks awesome, but unfortunately the motherboard's mechanism didn't allow me to do it. This is precisely because, as they applied this mechanism instead of the traditional screw, the SSD's backplate adds a little bit of height to it and it doesn't allow the mechanism to close. So in the end, I had to remove the heatsink and install it just like that, with the motherboard's heatsink. Which honestly, it's not bad at all, but I really like Corsair's one better aesthetically. Oh, and I almost forgot it, but I just remembered at the right moment to put the necessary backplate on the motherboard to then be able to install our water cooling. If you forget to do this, you almost always need to remove the motherboard to be able to put it on, and believe me, it's a pain. It's practically the same as forgetting to put the I/O shield, which in this case, and luckily, comes pre-installed on the motherboard. Anyway, now it was time to put the motherboard inside the case, which is extremely easy when you have this much space. Then we installed the water cooling pump, which is also super easy to do if you don't have any cables coming out of it. And well, now what was left was to start doing the cable management. And here several things happened because, on the one hand, the fans and the water cooling have basically 0 cables. Let's say, well, 2 at most. But the rest of the case, with the 3 factory fans and the 6 LED strips, have a lot of cables running through. Anyway, taking advantage of the inverted position of the power supply, I plugged in all the cables I needed, and here I noticed something interesting, which is that the connectors that go to the power supply are a little bit smaller than normal. This is good on the one hand because having smaller connectors increases the compatibility of this power supply with cases that maybe are not as wide as the 5000T. But the issue is that I don't know if they had to make any sacrifices to achieve this smaller size connector. Look what already happened to Nvidia with the 12-pin cable. I don't think this is the case because we would already know about it, but well, these are things to keep in mind. In the end, the cable management wasn't too problematic, basically because the case is huge and has a lot of space to route everything well. Also, the RGB cables that come factory installed are all pre-routed, which saves a lot of time. But hey, it is true that the advantage of having almost no cables at all with the new fans is lost a little bit by wanting to keep all the fans and LED strips that comes with the case. I don't know if they already did it, but if not, it would be great to see a version of the 5000T all with the new IQ Link system. This would be a way to eliminate a ton of cables that we don't actually need. Okay, with everything connected, what we were missing was to put in the graphics card we're gonna use, which is none other than the 12GB RTX 3080, specifically the MSI Supreme model. This GPU is a beast, and to this day, it still seems to me like one of the prettiest GPUs on the market. Why don't I use a 4080 or similar? Again, the logical answer is that I don't need it, especially considering that I'll be using a 1440p monitor. But the harsh reality is that I don't have a 4080 or 4090 lying around waiting to be used. The two I have are one in my home PC, and the second one is used for my test bench, so I cannot put it in this PC. So it has to be a 3080, and honestly, I cannot complain at all. And well, now the only thing left to do was to put the finishing touches on this PC, close the case panels, and cross my fingers that everything would turn on as it should. Which honestly didn't happen because several of the Corsair devices weren't lighting up. You see, I think I already told you, but it's supposed to be that for each IQ-Link channel you can put up to 7 different devices. Well, my logic was, we have 7 fans, we can connect everything together without a problem. But of course, what I didn't count on is that the water cooling pump also counts as one more device. So the solution was very simple, simply separate the fan loop into 2 and take another little cable into the IQ-Link. And once I did that, it was again time to see if everything worked. Okay, now we are done with the PC. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments. But this video promises a gaming setup, and for that we need a monitor, headset, mouse, keyboard, and mousepad. And while it's not gonna be 100% finished today because details are still missing, here I present you the new gaming setup in my office. The PC, well, I don't have to tell you much about it because you already saw it. But in terms of peripherals, I have all the ones that Corsair sent me a few days ago, which in fact I already reviewed on my Spanish channel. On one hand, we have the K65 Plus, a 70% keyboard that I love and whose factory sound is spectacular. For the mouse, we have the M75 Wireless, a symmetrical, relatively light mouse with spectacular performance, which is perfect for me since I have a claw grip. And finally, the headphones are the HS80 Max, which I really had little faith in, but they surprised me quite a bit. All this is put on a Corsair MM700 mousepad, which of course is RGB too. Now, as I said, things are missing. Right now I'm using a Gigabyte monitor, which yes, it's kinda good, but I want to change it for something more powerful. Maybe an OLED display, I don't know. Let me know in the comments what monitor you recommend. And also, it needs some decoration, I think. Maybe some of the Corsair mural accessories, or why not, some little pictures or similar. I also accept suggestions in the comments. Regarding the PC, the truth is that I haven't had too much time to test it in detail, since I'll do that for another video, so subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss it. But what I can tell you is this, the PC is very quiet, and something that I really liked is that even having different model of fans and LED strips, when we put IQ and synchronize everything together, there is a lot of coherence in the colors of the different devices, which is great. Obviously, everything we used for this setup is linked in the description of this video in case you want to take a look. And also I want to know what you thought of this build and this gaming setup. I will read you in the comments and answer you for sure. So, this is when I say goodbye. As always, my name is Wayan. I'll send you a big hug and I'll see you in the next video.